I would like to start this presentation by saying a huge thank you, not only to IATEFL Poland on behalf of TESOL Macedonia, Thrace, Northern Greece. Thank you for having us as affiliates for one more year. I would like to say that this entire presentation is dedicated to the brave Polish firefighters and the Polish people who so generously helped our country in the wildfires about a month ago. We suffered terrible loss, both in environmental wealth, but also in people's houses and amazing beauty. But it's nice to know that we have friends around who will join and help. And this comes from the bottom of my heart. Thank you so much. So today's presentation has to do with how online teaching affected us as teachers, our students as learners, and whether or not we managed to get some learning outcomes during the first lockdown in 2020 and then the revisited and longer one in 2021. Now, the key words for me in my title are for a long time. This was the key game changer, I will say. Let me first give you an overview of my session. So first of all, we are going to look at the paradigm shift that we have experienced in the last few years. Actually, Dorota and I have been discussing how conferences used to mean a totally different thing. And now the ideas that are associated with a conference are computer screen, mouse, headphones, and microphone and signal. Then we are going to look into a SWOT analysis of the online teaching as launched and implemented both during 2020 and 2021. We are also going to look into issues of human factor, which has to do with emotional intelligence, motivation, and also how communication altered the situation in those cases where online learning, online teaching was successful. Then we will discuss online teaching and particular reasons for failure, because there were occasions in which the teachers said, it didn't work for me. It was horrible. I never want to go back. This was not what I want. This is not what I've signed up for as a career, as a professional. We're going to look into some takeaways, and I'm afraid to say that my actual contribution is future implications, which is in the form of what we need for the future. And I don't have any answers. So if you came for answers, sorry, there are more questions. My good friend Rob said that we have to ask questions, and asking questions, clever questions, is half of the game. So before we start, I would like to take 3 minutes. So I now have it's 4:04 with my digital clock. I would like you to use the link that Dorota is going to provide. This is a tool that takes you to a survey.
This is the link in the chat, yes? Yes, so everybody can see it, yes.
Perfect. I will stop sharing for a minute so that you can all go to this environment. And I would like you, there are 5 questions. If you could please answer as truthfully as you can. I know that it's very difficult to get people to read people's minds and decide how to phrase the answer choices, but it's a good way for us to get an idea. You should see IATEFL Poland, welcome to Maria-Araxi Sachpazian session, and press let's get started so that you can answer the 5 questions. I will not speak for a little while. Of course, if you have questions, I will be monitoring the chat so that if there are any problems or any questions, I can offer my assistance. This is so that we can see whether we had the same experience or almost the same experience. I don't think so, no. Rob, if I start singing, everybody will go. So no, I will just stick to the program provides an empty space, but no, just simply choose one of the answers by clicking on it. I totally understand, Agnieszka. Thanks for this. Online teaching had this feeling, it gave us this, perhaps because it happened so suddenly, it was something that we had to do. There was no way out of it. And at the same time, it was absolutely necessary for us to continue with what we did, no matter how complex it was, in a completely new environment. Magdalena, is impossible. You cannot type something, you cannot answer, or was online teaching impossible? So that I don't.
I think this is just multiple choice. Yes, we are not.
Yes,
choosing the answer.
Yeah.
I have just finished the survey.
Good.
So you just go through one question another. It's just choosing the answer.
Thank you.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I was trying to do so, but for some reason, for the first question, it was impossible to choose one. When I click, it simply asks me to write something down. That's why I asked.
Oh, you can answer the question if it doesn't allow you to do it. You could answer the question in your own. Let me check that, because I tried it quite a few times. But so just to speed things up, because I have promised Dorota that I will finish on time. I
have just copied the link again.
Thank you.
Rob is really, we have done it simultaneously. Okay, so the link for anyone who cannot see it at the top of this.
So some of the problems that colleagues reported and reasons why they were so frustrated with online teaching were the connection problems and in general, any problems with equipment. The other two problems had to do with cameras, and cameras were related with the GDPR, so that was even worse. And the other was microphones. Now, I don't mind cameras, but microphones, typing answers takes such a long time. I mean, if I answer a question like, how did you like this reading text? And I expect everybody, like 20 people or 10 people to type answers, it's time consuming and we lose the immediacy of the connection. My students refuse to keep their microphones open and type answers. No visualization. Personally, while planning my lessons, I can see how this lesson is going to go about. And lack of support. So that was the first set of questions. Then the second question has to do with motivation. Engage learners in meaningful interaction, motivate the learners and stay motivated myself. Parents and their reaction to online teaching. Now, parents in Greece are heavily involved in their children's schooling. Most of them have completely the wrong idea about autonomy and independence, so they interfere with their child studying all the time. And of course, this it comes back to us. It becomes a problem because they project their own ideas about what teaching should be. So we had parents who were first cautious, later positive, first cautious and then negative. Those who kept changing their mind depending on how the situation was with their kid, and those who never told me and I never asked. Then the next question had to do with the reaction of students. They liked it because it was easier for them. They tried to do the work, but they couldn't. And I truly believe that for some students, it was terribly difficult to focus. They could focus, but then they worked well, so they liked it. And I would say that for me, that was my experience with my secondary students. They weren't always positive, but it worked well. And the last question had to do with how we feel now. It was okay for that time. I'm happy it's over. I have added one more skill. I think I prefer to teach face-to-face, and it was an insufficient means. So I'll just try to see the responses. The the whole thing about online teaching has been the fact that we were taken from one environment where we were 1 minute and put in another environment about which we knew very little. So when discussing the human factor, apologies, when discussing the human factor, we have to think of how urgently we had to shift. Unexpected changes are, first of all, uncertain. We choose any means we find available. And sometimes these decisions are so rushed that we don't stop to check if teachers are ready for the challenge. Have we provided them with the kind of assistance, support framework that they need in order to face this challenge? So for us teachers, it was a matter of, now, put the time in, invest now, and congratulations will come later on. Success will come later on. In the meantime, you're lost in the woods and you don't even have a compass with you, which is scary. At the back of my head, as I was teaching online for the first year, I kept thinking, are we doing it right? Is this what it's supposed to be? Am I doing all I can? Are there more things that I don't know about? And this was gnawing at me day after day, and I couldn't even see my students and ask them about it. Now, that comes from a person who likes computers. I am a computer fan. I enjoy working with technology. I think technology is the future. We cannot deny it. We cannot become refuseniks. But for some people, call them digital native immigrants, call them unwilling to accept technology, it was a very important stumbling block. They didn't like the fact that technology was taking over. Now, let me tell you a little story. This is a picture of my students the evening before the lockdown. When we did this activity, we knew that we wouldn't be meeting, but we knew that we wouldn't meet for 15 days. They were doing an activity which I enjoy doing with them face to face, because as you can see, they have several post-its and they have to create a timeline. So it would be less tactile and more difficult. Of course, there are tools. I could do it with sticky notes online, but I was happy that they were interacting, helping each other, and actually building this timeline of Greek history on the purple bits of paper, post-its, and European history on the white bits of paper. Now, this isn't my classroom. This is the large hallway, the entrance of the school. So I was using it because we were alone. It was quite late in the evening, and I could take as much space as I wanted. The following day, that was my reality. So in the first picture, you can see me teaching at Sitford School in Oxfordshire. And these are my lovely pupils. These are actually Russian and Italian students. They were A2. And this is my space. That's what I had. These were my boundaries of teaching. I could visualize groups of people. I could visualize students working together and class dynamics. I could also see their faces, see who is chatting, who is trying to get out of my attention and do something naughty. And then all of a sudden, my reality was first my face on the screen, and then students as mini screens. The good thing, and we have to keep thinking of the positive in every situation, is the common denominator, and that's me. Not because I'm me, because the teacher is the common denominator. I just had to spend a little bit of time thinking of all the transferable skills that I could take from the picture on the left and pour them into the picture on the right. And this was very important for me, because unless I did it, I wouldn't have the chance to survive this paradigm shift. Now, we knew that the length of time would be short, but at the end of the day, it wasn't short. It was prolonged, and it was actually much longer than we expected. Also, we had no research data, and we still have very little data regarding how much learners of primary and secondary education are affected by online teaching. What we have in lieu of data is information about CPD, master's degrees, adult education, additional education, So it's all to do with adults. This is the first time we're looking into not quite self-organized digital environments, but definitely monitored self-organized environments of learning. And the issue of motivation and emotional intelligence, both of these issues are key in this case. Also, it wasn't simply that we created a blended environment. Just for so-and-so class, we will have a couple of extra hours doing online teaching. It became mainstream. And this meant that students had to understand that now this was school. It wasn't a kind of game. It was serious work. So how did online teaching become the game changer? First of all, our lessons became a matter of public attention and interest. I teach in a secondary school, my secondary teaching takes place in a foreign language school here in Kalamaria, Thessaloniki, where I live. And I also teach at a university at City College, the Europe campus of University of York. I'm used to teaching in classrooms where I control my door. It opens and it closes as I please and as I feel. And there are observers, but they are more like asked to join or they request to join. Now, my online lessons took place in the living room of the house where my students live, or I had very little idea where they took place and who was listening to me. My learners disappeared. They became thumbnails, they became fuzzy images, their cameras wouldn't work. And that's how I lost my ability to read the room, see their intentions, look into their eyes and measure the success of my activity, and also manage to convey that my eyes are on you and I can, in a way, remind you of your ethical responsibility to do the job. So my learners had to perform a double act. They had to impress me, they had to perform as in class. They also had to impress their parents, uncles, grandfathers, grandparents. And there's a joke on the Greek Facebook saying the voice of the mother that says, "But you know it, darling, just say it." So as you can imagine, this constitutes observer pollution. Contrary to that, my tertiary level students disappeared. They were just there so that they could say present and then they would disappear. And if I called them out, they would get a message, they would resurface a couple of minutes later and say, "Oh, miss, I had a problem with my microphone." And that would repeat itself time after time. We are talking about digital natives here. Digital natives who failed to see what I, the digital immigrant, saw, the opportunity in it. We do not want schools closed for a prolonged period of time. It's related with a lot of problems in educational behavior, but they did not see it. So I've already mentioned how I lost control of my teaching space, how for me, it might have been a choice, but for others, it wasn't. Other teachers would never have chosen it, and how we were tricked by this, "Oh, it's only for a short time." So the next part that I would like to link to what I've already said has to do with technology in education. A very interesting thing happened, but this is now a view of the topic from my country. Greece has been one of the countries in Europe where English, much like in Poland, is absolutely necessary. We have always been focused on our children getting certificates to an exaggerated extent, I would say, sometimes even over fluency and accuracy, we prefer the certificate. But the thing is, you cannot travel speaking Greek, so you need English, you need a lingua franca. Technology was supposed to be one of the cornerstones of English language teaching. And that was the situation before COVID. Computer labs, bring your own technology, computer software, interactive whiteboards, and this was considered a good thing because it made learning more impactful, more lively, more visual, more learner-friendly, and also it was, there to be for the future. Now, the moment we turned to online education, negative voices started raising the alarm. Are we ready to do it? Is our material ready to be taught? Are we all technologically inclined, and do we know enough about technology to do it? Is it supposed to be learning? Should parents pay for this thing, or is it the cheap and easy option? Should we give parents discounts because this is the cheap and easy option? Actually, it's different, but I would say at this stage, more demanding, not easier. And I don't understand why people got this terrible idea that if we teach online, we can give people some discount because it isn't actually teaching and we will have to replace these hours. No, if it is done correctly and if all the aspects are taken into consideration, it is learning. Might technology have failed to engage the learners? Were they engaged enough? Is it only technology that has to engage the learners, or should we as the teachers be the extra factor? And is it to the best interest of the learners to be taught online in this way? This led me to start this SWOT analysis. So what were the strengths? First of all, as I mentioned before, we do not want closed schools for a prolonged period of time. The leader of Khan Academy has mentioned in an interview that the loss of momentum and the fact that students remain out of school for something like 2 months, 3 months, causes them to lose not only what they have learned, but the potential and the power of learning, which they have then to reinstall. It's like not using an application on your iPhone, and then when you go to use it, you get that little cloud and it needs updating, and this updating takes time. So we tried to instill interaction. We tried to get the lessons to be real lessons. And I believe that in the cases where online teaching was successful, that's how it happens. It was interactive, it was meaningful, and it did feel like a lesson. In cases where teachers simply spoke to a camera, sent some photocopies, limited the duration of their lesson, and in general altered the lesson to a great extent so that the face-to-face version and the online version had very little in common, progress was not made, interaction was lost, therefore language was not taught. We need to, through this, we managed to get what Dudney et al. Coined as a term in 2014, to create prosumers. So our learners are consumers of technology. They are used to playing games, downloading songs, downloading films. This is all to do with actually consuming products of technology. Now they were asked to create their own products. May these be online presentations, may these be contributions to lessons, and that made them more active. At the same time, it felt like we were in the same boat, wondering about the same problems, giving each other strength. And as the teacher was there, and I felt that personally, that the students didn't suffer the poisoning of gossip. Miss, we're not going to take any exams. Miss, the school year is going to be cancelled. Miss, this is going to happen. The teacher is able to make the students feel reassured. Some of the weaknesses, as I mentioned before, there were times when I felt that I was in a very bad place. I had no idea what my colleagues were doing. I had very little understanding of whether other teachers were feeling lost without a compass. I didn't know, is this what online teaching should be? I could feel that I was making progress, but I could also see that my groups were different and they were changing. I was under this heavy layer of silence that there were, at times it was making me suffocate, especially as it was time consuming and ruined the time planning in my lesson plan. I experienced that mainly with my tertiary level students who actually disappeared. It's not that they didn't know how to answer the question, they found the crack in the system. You cannot actually penalize my lack of presence, my lack of attendance. I seem to be present, so I am by the book, here and present. And if they were there and they didn't want to answer a question, they could always say, I'm thinking, I don't know. But this ate up and devoured my time. I have now identified in my own understanding of the situation that the fact that I couldn't make eye contact with my learners, the fact that I couldn't call them to be responsible, cost us their participation and their full awareness of what they were doing. This meant that I had to spend time emailing them or asking for personal Gmails, in which I insisted that they have their cameras on, because of course these were not recorded and they were there were just two people there, me and them. And there were times when they later said, Miss, thank you for this, because I was not going to participate at all. I could feel that I was losing the thread of the lesson and you shook me up. But this had a tremendous effect on me, because I felt that if I stop looking at each one of my learners, I might suffer losses. And when I find out, they might be all too out into the sea and not waving, but drowning. I also felt that perhaps it's not the medium, perhaps it's my lesson plan, perhaps I haven't discovered as much as I should about this tool, perhaps there are other things that I need to know. My first choice was Big Blue Button, because it was a tool that we used at TESOL and it was free, but it collapsed the moment the planet started teaching online. Then I turned to Google Hangouts and Google and Gmeet. At that time, Google Meet wasn't available to everybody, so my input account didn't give me access to teaching. Later on, it did, but by that time, I turned to Zoom. And then, to my amazement, I started discovering online videos about how to use the Zoom appropriately and correctly, and finding out about breakout rooms and what can enrich my teaching, how I can make it as similar to the in-class teaching as possible. Lack of assessment in a country where, like Greece, where marks are of central importance, meant no reason to study. And of course, this wasn't a fact. I mean, my university students still had their coursework, still had their assignments. My students took their quizzes, but of course, if they wanted to cheat, they could cheat. I took some measures when they took big and important semester and quarterly tests, but of course, I wouldn't make that much out of vocabulary quizzes. Do you want to cheat? Go right ahead. The thing is not about how you answer 10 questions on vocabulary, but how you use the vocabulary. And if there are discrepancies, then here we are. And I could see that this lack of assessment, this lack of, let's say, report card days and report cards was affecting them. Then again, that's how they have been reared. I've already mentioned this, so I will move on. I felt that these were thankless times. When my students do well, I want to say thank you. So I do something for them. I bring in a game, or we spend a little time doing their favorite activity. I ask them if they want to see a short video and discuss it. I sometimes buy them some pizza or bring in short, little ice creams. What could I do now for fun? There was no way I could reward my students. And even if I told them, no lesson today, that wouldn't be fun, because especially in the 2020 lockdown, time seemed endless. They wanted to have a lesson. Teaching became a very sedentary activity, which I had never imagined, I would say. And that made me feel that I was becoming as big as the room, and the room was suffocating me. And of course, that did not help me in the first few weeks of teaching and later on. Then I discovered that walking can alleviate this feeling. And of course, all of this was a projection of my own personal anxiety. Now, taking a growth mindset aspect to it, we managed to build some actual environments which are remote and digital. We are learning things. And also, we are now, we've got some traffic lights, some big signposts flashing on and off and telling research idea, research opportunity. We didn't know that before. We have actually managed to show our learners that there is a lot more to being a computer literate 21st century citizen than playing Minecraft or posting things on Instagram. So we are honing their set of digital skills as well. We have tried to put in the foundations of independent learning. In my country, this is very big because learners are being supported by their family, by assistant teachers, who knows what they have, and they're very seldom left to their own devices to figure out how to translate what the teacher has said to something personally meaningful and relevant. I also feel that this time managed to put an end to the idea that the students learn through the book. Students learn through a million things. They learn through the book, they learn through the teacher, through their own mistakes, through their experiences. Learning is a construction. Learning is a process of interpreting and combining. So this helped us understand that it's not just the teacher who teaches or the material, but a combination of multiple functions and factors. And in a way, all of this helped us sustain the students' motivation. Regarding the threats, perhaps the time that we lost because of technical glitches or waiting for the students to think, learners may have found an opportunity to criticize our lack of skills in using digital tools, or perhaps even monitoring their learning. Perhaps even they thought, she's not all that knowing after all. She doesn't know if I'm cheating or not. See, they may not see us as people who can cause learning to happen, but perhaps this can lead to further understanding of the need for their own cognitive engagement. Then we perhaps the problem was that certain students have lost parts of their learning because they were not very consistent. And also students might not do so well in exams. This has been disproven already because students have done brilliantly in their exams. So why are we discussing this system and the human factor? First of all, we've got in a school, we've got the teacher population, the student population, the teacher population, and the managers. These three mechanisms interact, and it's not just one part of the system that works. If one fails, everything fails. Personally, I have to look into motivation from all three of these sides. And unfortunately, I had to leave out the parents. Were the parents a motivating factor for me during that time? Fortunately, they were. Was my manager a motivating factor? Did I receive enough support? Did I need more support? And who is going to articulate this need so that managers in the future know what the teacher population needs? Did we receive enough feedback from our student population as to what kind of support they needed? So motivation has many aspects. When I think of my motivation, I think of what I offer my learners. So my motivation is to keep them engaged, to keep them active. And in order to do that, I have to be motivated. So when I think of, firstly, I think of teachers motivating their learners. What slips my mind is that my co-workers motivate me, and we lost that during the pandemic. Then I remember that I frequently forget that my learners motivate me, and it was really trying for teachers not to have this kind of motivation during the time of the pandemic. The motivation that comes from the students, and also I am my own motivator. So if I don't have my support system in the form of teachers, if I don't have the eyes of my learners, and if I have lost the classroom where I feel that what motivation I give actually works, how am I going to keep myself motivated? So in a way, this is what led me to study more about motivation, and that led me to rethink and reevaluate the importance of emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence and how we receive our own feelings, how we process what we feel, so that we can understand ourselves, our own emotions, in order to manage our emotions well, and then manage to manage other people's emotions and motivate them. This is also related with the ability, the empathy to understand how others feel, and what I said before, our ability to read the room, which sadly was lost, much like it's lost now. So we are talking about how to sustain the human factor, is how to sustain the feasible levels of personal and corporate motivation. I mentioned how my co-workers motivate me. So can teachers remain motivated when there is no school? Is it enough if the managers motivate the team, or should other mechanisms also work? So I'm the manager, I motivate the team. I try to put in some sessions and give motivation. If the others are not willing to accept this motivation, will it work? Can an unmotivated person motivate others? And does it work as a one-off flash, or does it have to be supplied time and time again? So what goes into my motivation is, first of all, my own perspective. Who am I? Which role am I thinking of? Am I thinking with my manager's hat on? Am I thinking with my teacher's hat on? And if I'm thinking with my teacher's hat on, the first thing is ethical. Am I willing to see my students give up? Am I willing to give up? Because if I give up, they will give up. How do I understand the task that I have to perform? Do I see it as specific, well analyzed, and attainable? If I see it as a worthy cause, then it's worthy for me to invest in it. And this is the cost-benefit analysis. If I believe that there is a great loss if I don't manage to do that, I will do my best to manage my the goals and to try and attain my goals. How much do I believe in myself? If I keep second guessing my choices, probably this is not going to help. How do the rest of my team define this goal? Is there common understanding? If some say it's not worth trying to teach online, it's going to be for a couple of days, just go through the motions of teaching. If others say, no, it's very important to discover the actual mechanics of teaching online, then we realize that all of these have to be shared and communicated, which leads us to the core of the human factor, which is communication, so that we can check what we believe against what others believe, we can reinforce reality, and then we can engage into some trial and error and get feedback. It is also the cornerstone of acceptance, and acceptance is what we need in order to create a non-judgmental atmosphere. So we need a solid framework of support, open channels of communication, regular meetings, face-to-face as monitoring sessions and whole staff meetings. We need steps. So for teachers to remain motivated, they need a compass, they need a map. What is your next goal? And we need to see how much we have progressed week after week. Teaching online was draining. So what we needed to do was to examine our personal beliefs about it and perhaps try to see the positive side of it. Become more aware of our own teaching online style and willingness to see how this benefits us. As we said before, growth mentality, I'm building another set of skills. Research and study what we don't know. I didn't know that Zoom had breakout rooms. I didn't know how to install them. I didn't know how to do it at first, but thanks to digital resources, i.e. YouTube, I found out, and this is a good step to show our learners that we keep learning and to see opportunity, to see the crisis as an opportunity. So some questions. Does my own motivation relate to my students' motivation? For sure it does. Do functional groups become dysfunctional when online? Potentially, yes, but I have to figure out why they become dysfunctional. What's missing from each one of these groups? And I definitely don't have to start from scratch. I have to look back at what works in the actual face-to-face setting with this group and go back to it. So in order to keep my learners motivated, first of all, I have to accept the situation. Poo-pooing it and pretending that this is something like, it's going to go, it's nothing much, don't invest into it, doesn't work. I have to reach out and see who is not there, because probably these people are in need of communication. I have to stop assuming that my digital natives are computer geniuses, because probably they are when it serves their purposes, not when it serves my teaching. And I have to discover alternative ways about everything. Online teaching failed when there was lack of focus and lack of adaptation, when we tried to overplan and introduce too many new things. There is a limit to how much modernization and alteration students can take. When the thread was lost, when there was little consistency and little similarity to the actual face-to-face setting, and when there was lack of progress. So, finishing, my takeaways. If we want online teaching to be humane and to work, we have to revisit the old and tested, embed them by adapting them into the new environment. So we need to think out of the box, but we shouldn't forget that the box is there for a reason. We should find alternative ways of monitoring, for example, emailing students, having personal meetings, and also popping into those breakout rooms. Observe our own teaching. Personally, I learned a lot by actually looking at my own teaching sessions. Teaching in a planned way, which doesn't suffocate the initiative of the teacher and what students have to contribute, and not forgetting emotional intelligence. The implications for the future, well, we need some serious changes in teacher education. We need new curricula, I'm finishing, about teacher education. We need blended, some ideas about how to teach in blended environments, some basic coding, and some more information about how the brain learns. We also need further research about the paradox of digital natives. Why didn't they do so well in digital environments? How they understand the concept of cognitive engagement? If online teaching impacts the brain differently, how we can create constructivist learning environment in online settings, and contrastive analysis between observation data from face-to-face and digital lessons. If you have any questions, you know where to find me. In Greece, I have somewhere, this is my bibliography. Sorry, I skipped the email slide. Thank you so much. I hope that next time we'll be in Dorota, which city?
In we hope in Poznan, but it hasn't been confirmed yet.
Not Krakow?
Okay.
You don't like me.
Okay,
you don't like me enough. You don't like me enough. Okay,
No,
so next time, pierogi in Poland. Bardzo dziękuję, IATEFL Polska.
Yes, I just would like to thank you. I really have listened to your presentation, attentively, and I think it reflects all our hesitations, thoughts, and your takeaways, also ours as well. I have to say I enjoyed online learning. I have to say that now we have another question of switching from online to offline.
You're absolutely right.
That's the idea, what to keep, what not to lose,
Exactly.
and how to incorporate what we have learned. So that's perhaps our takeaways as well, and this is something that we will leave you, the participants, with it. Okay, so that's it, ladies and gentlemen. Maria, take care. Thank you very much. Hope to see you soon, not only online. Thank you very much to all of you participating, and please enjoy the rest of the conference. Goodbye and thank you.
Dziękuję bardzo.
Bye. Bye. Bye.
Bye. Bye.